The story is told of a homeless man who was on his way into a church on a Sunday morning. Spotting the man's dirty clothes, one of the ushers stopped him outside the church at the door and asked if he needed help. "I was praying," said the homeless man, "and God told me to come to this church." "Well," said the usher, "I suggest you go back and pray more. Perhaps God will tell you something different." The next Sunday, the homeless man was there again, and again the usher stopped him at the door. "Did you get a different answer?" the usher asked. "Yes, I did," said the homeless man. "I told God that you don't want me here, but God said to me, 'Keep trying, son.' I have also been trying to get into that church for several years, and they wouldn't let me, but I have not given up." God's love for us did not begin and end at the point of creation. He continues to provide for our sustenance even when we derail, even when we fail. The first reading gives us the story of God's miraculous provision of food for his prophet Elijah when he was running away from the wicked Queen Jezebel. The same Elijah who called down fire from heaven, the same Elijah who was able to withstand and kill the 450 prophets of Baal. At this point, the same Elijah became so hungry and discouraged that he felt death was a better option. He said, "This is enough, O Lord. Take my life, for I am no better than my fathers." It was at that point that God intervened. St. Paul would say that God's strength is at its best when we are at our weakest point. Sometimes we are overwhelmed by thoughts of failures around us that we turn away from people that truly love us and from the second chances that God is given to us. Through such, God is saying to us, like he said to Elijah, "Get up and eat, else the journey will be too long for you." The gospel passages since the past 2 Sundays have been about God's provision for us in the person of Jesus, who is the bread of life. It all began with the feeding of the multitude by Jesus with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. The first reading, the gospel passage, and even the second reading are preparing the ground for a sound teaching on the theology of the Holy Eucharist. After the crowd listened to the declaration of Jesus that he is the bread that came down from heaven, the crowd began to do what crowds are famous for. They gossip, they judge, they criticize, they accuse, they backbite, they disapprove, and protest even when sometimes they are not sure of what they are protesting against. They said, "Is this not Jesus, the son of Joseph? Do we not know his father and mother? Then how can he say, 'I have come down from heaven'?" The crowd did not know that Jesus was in their midst as the new Adam. For just as the first Adam brought about the spiritual death of humanity by food, Jesus as the new Adam came to bring life to humanity by food. They closed the doors of their hearts, and they would not let Jesus in to bring them life. When Jesus refers to himself as the bread of life, we are made to wonder if there is a bread of death. At the beginning of his public ministry, The devil tempted Jesus to turn stone into bread and eat. But Jesus rejected that and opted for the word that comes from God. The bread that the devil was offering to Jesus is an example of the bread of death. The bread that is an expression of pride. The bread that is an expression of selfishness. The bread of death is that bread that dethrones God and enthrones the self. The bread of death does not satisfy us when we are hungry. The bread of death only makes us hungrier and hungrier until we are exhausted. The effect of the bread of death is well felt in this our out-of-control materialism and consumerism. Our present epoch, our present age, our present culture is characterized by various forms of addictions. Addiction to alcohol, addiction to drugs, addiction to sexual immorality, addiction to tobacco, and all other forms of addictions. We keep taking in more and more, but cannot seem to get enough of them until they kill us. Instead of us devouring them, they end up devouring us. They destroy not just our bodies, but they destroy our spirits. They destroy our relationships. They destroy our families. They destroy our sense of mission. And they destroy many good things around us and about us. The bread of death is the opposite of what Jesus is and gives. Jesus gives us the bread of life. The bread of life satisfies us always. Our best encounter with the bread of life is at the celebration of the Holy Mass. At the Holy Mass, we encounter the bread of life in the Word of God proclaimed during the liturgy of the Word. And we also encounter the bread of life during the liturgy of the Holy Eucharist. The body, the blood, the soul, and the divinity of Jesus Christ present under the appearances of bread and wine. Regarding this, St. Thomas Aquinas would say, "Faith will tell us Christ is present when our human senses fail." Jesus continues to knock on the doors of our hearts so as to feed us with the bread of life. Someone once said that Jesus is like a computer, and so when you allow Jesus to enter into your life, He will scan all your problems, He will edit your tensions, He will delete your worries, He will download solutions for you, and finally, He will save you. Would you let Him in?